"What is this thing you give birth to, woman?" Ekene snapped in anger as he looked at the newborn baby his wife, Akona, had just given birth to. Akona was the most beautiful woman and the dream of every man in the village of Nanka. As a young woman ready for marriage, every man in Nanka village wanted her to be their wife because she was not only physically beautiful, but also had good characters and excellent home training. For most men interested in marrying Akona, one of the reasons was to have a beautiful daughter who could be a replica of her mother. Among all the men who wanted to marry Akona, she chose Ekene because he was a brave man who knew what he wanted and was deeply in love with her. Akona and Ekene got married, and their marriage was going well. Akona conceived after a year of marriage, and Ekene Joy knew no bond when he found out that Akona was pregnant with a baby girl. "I am so happy to have a mini you. She will look so much like you," Ekene would tell Akona in happiness. Aside from Ekene, everyone in the village wanted to know what Akona's baby would look like. Many speculated that she would be even more beautiful than her mother. On the fateful night Akona went into labor, the villagers gathered around the hut where she was giving birth, waiting for her to bring her child into the world. The midwives, experienced and skilled, had gathered in Akona's house to assist with the delivery. As the labor progressed, the midwives encouraged Akona with kind words and gentle touches. Hours passed, and finally the moment arrived. With one last push, Akona brought her baby into the world. As the midwife quickly took the child to clean and examine, there was a sudden silence in the room. Each of them were startled and shocked. Akona's baby had a massively large head, extremely large for a child. Ekene rushed into the room, excited to see his beautiful baby girl, but was shocked to see the big-headed baby lying there. "What is this thing you gave birth to, woman?" Ekene snapped in anger as he looked at the newborn baby. He stormed out of the room in anger. Akona was also shocked and confused to see how big her baby's head was. She was scared to carry her, but when the baby let out her first cry, Akona's heart melted. She carried, kissed, and embraced her, and named her Nkiru. Years later, as Nkiru grew, so did her head, and she was persistently ridiculed by everyone in the village, including children and adults. They would mock her and call her Nkilu, the calabash head, pointing and laughing whenever she passed. Among all the villagers who mocked Nkiru, Ebuka, the prince of the village, took a special interest in mocking her harshly. Whenever he was bored, he would purposely send his guards to fetch Nkiru to the village palace just to tease her and laugh at her. He would make jokes about her head and ask her to place things on it, and him and his friend would laugh about it. These constant ridicules created deep wounds in Akona's heart. She would cry day and night, wishing her head was normal like everyone else in the village. Her mother would always calm her down and remind her never to pay attention to the insults or jests of the villagers or the prince. But for her father, he hated the sight of her and didn't want it to associate with her or call her his daughter. Whenever the villagers and Prince Ebuka mocked and laughed at Nkiru, she would run into the village forest, seeking comfort among the trees and plants. The forest became her refuge, a place where she could escape the cruel words and find peace. She spent hours wandering through the dense forest, marveling at the beauty of nature and collecting various herbs and plants. Over time, she learned that Through her time spent in the forest, Akuna developed a deep understanding of herbal medicine and natural remedies from the plants. She observed how some plants had a soothing scent while others seemed to heal injuries. Curious and eager to learn more, she started to experiment with the herbs she found. She crushed leaves, infused teas, and made potions, carefully noting their effects. She learned that certain plants could ease pain, reduce fever, and heal any wounds, while some will even make anyone sleep. With deep interest, she kept making potions with leaves, hoping that one day she would create a potion that would reduce the size of her head. One day, the villagers were celebrating a festival, and all villagers gathered in the main square, happily enjoying the music, food, and games. Nkilu was there too, hoping to have a good time despite the usual teasing. The prince saw her and decided to make everyone laugh at her expenses. He climbed onto a stage in the middle of the square and called out loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special announcement. Today, we will have a contest to see who can balance the most apples on their head." Everyone turned to look, curious about this new game. The prince continued, "But there is only one person who can win this contest. Let's have Nkilu come up here. With her calabash head, she can surely balance the most apples." The crowd burst into laughter, and Nkilu felt her shake, born with embarrassment. She wanted to run, but she stayed, her eyes downcast. The prince, enjoying the laughter, handed her a basket of apple. "Come on, Nkilu," he said with mockery. "Show us how many you can balance." "Please stop," Nkilu said quietly, her voice shaking with sadness. The prince laughed again. "Oh, don't be serious, Nkilu. We're just having a bit of fun." With trembling hands, Nkilu took the basket. She carefully placed one apple on her head, then another. The villagers watched, whispering and giggling. As she tried to balance the third apple, it fell, and the audience burst into laughter. The prince laughed the loudest, pointing at her. "See? Even with that big head, she can't balance more than 2 apples." Nkilu burst into tears. She quickly picked up the fallen apples and ran away while the prince and the villagers continued to laugh behind her. She kept running until she reached the edge of the village and then continued into the forest. Eventually, she slowed down, sank to her knees by the large tree, in tears and trying to calm herself down. As she wiped her tears away, she heard a faint cry nearby. Startled, she looked around and spotted a man lying on the ground a few feet away. He was injured with a deep cut on his face and bruises on his arm. Nkilu hesitated for a moment in helping the man, but her natural kindness took over. She hurried to the man's side and knelt down. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man opened his eyes and tried to sit up, gasping in pain. I was attacked by bandits," he said in weakness. "They took all my belongings and left me here." Nkilu quickly assessed his injuries. "You really need help," she said softly. "Wait here, I am coming." She quickly gathered a few leaves in the forest and rushed back to the man. She crushed the leaves with her hands and made a paste from it. Gently, she placed it on the wounds on his face and arms, and the bleeding stopped. The man stopped groaning in pain and looked up at Nkilu in surprise. "The pain has stopped. Are you a herbalist?" he asked. Nkilu smiled and said, "I know a few things about leaf." "Thank you," he said. "My name is Shike. If you hadn't been here, I would have bled to death." Nkilu managed a small smile. "I am Nkilu. Let's get you up." She helped him to his feet, and together they walked back to the village. When Nkilu brought the injured man Shike home, her father was furious. He met them at the door, his face twisted in anger. "You this useless girl, what are you thinking? he snapped. Not only do you run off into the forest and waste your days there, now you bring a stranger into my home? With that calabash head of yours, you should know better than to bring strangers into my house. Nkiru flinched at her father's harsh words. Her eyes filled with tears. Before she could respond, her mother, Akona, stepped forward and placed a gentle head on her husband's arm. Please, my husband, let her explain, Akona said softly. She found this man injured alone. She only wants to help. Fine, he said reluctantly, but he's not staying inside my house. He will only stay in the barn where the tubers of yam are stored. It is only for 1 week, that's all. Nkiru nodded gratefully and helped Shike to the barn, making sure he was comfortable there. She helped him with food and water, and Shike thanked her repeatedly, deeply touched by her kindness. Over the week, Shike slowly recovered. Nkiru visited him every day, bringing him herbal remedies and tending to his wounds. With all of Nkiru's care, Shike began to feel stronger. The wound healed. However, the wound left a large scar on his face, making him look hideous. As Shike's week in the barn came to an end, he moved out of Nkiru's home and found a small place to stay in the village. He also got a job in a pigsty, where he looked after pigs. Chike became Nkiru's only friend, someone who saw her for who she truly was and not just the girl with the big head. Days turned into weeks, and the villagers began to notice the friendship between Nkiru and Shike. They often saw them together, walking through the village or gathering herbs in the forest. The villagers and even Prince Ebuka continued to insult Nkiru even more. They whispered behind her back and mocking her for being friends with a man who is not only ugly with a hideous scars on his face, but also work in a pigsty to earn a living. One day, as Nkiru and Shike was walking through the village, they overheard some villagers talking. Look at them, one woman sneered. Nkiru with her calabash head and that scarred man from the pigsty. They make quite a couple, don't they? Another man laughed and added, Of course they do. Maybe she thinks one day her knowledge of herbs will miraculously remove the ugly mark on his face and make him look as she wants, the man said in jest. The prince, who is standing nearby, couldn't resist joining in the jest. He said, Who else will she be with? She has finally found her type. He walked up to Nkiru and Shike and said, Nkiru, why don't you like do things for yourself? Of all the villagers, you choose to be with this type of man? He laughed. Oh, I forgot. It's obvious he's the only one who can be with you because you both complement each other. He mocked and laughed. Nkiru felt her heart ache at his cruel words, but she quietly turned to Shike, who equally looked hurt and sad, and said to him, Let's go. As they walked away, Shike sighed and said, I'm sorry, Nkiru. Maybe it's better if we don't spend so much time together. No, please, don't listen to them. I don't care what they say. None of them wanted to be friends with me or associate with me until you came. Why is it their concern now who I'm friend with? Shike smiled. Thank you, he said. Your friendship means more to me than anything. I wonder how I would have coped in this village if you were not here. Well, we are here for each other, Nkiru said and smiled. One day, we will both find partners who will fall in love with us and accept us the way we are, she said. One day, a severe illness struck the village. The village water supply was contaminated and many villagers fell sick, including the king. The popular village healer, who was known to treat anything, couldn't find a cure to this sickness and panic spread through the community as people began to die. Desperately, the villagers, including the king, turned to Nkiru for help. No, I don't care. Let them all get sick. Why should I help them? Have they forgotten I am the same Nkiru they insulted and calling names because of my head? Nkiru said in anger when her mother told her the king needed her help. Nkiru, my daughter, Don't say that, her mother pleaded. You must not repay evil with evil. You have a good heart. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Use the gifts you have to do good. Maybe that's how God wants to turn things around for you. Nkiru sighed, touched by her mother's kind words. Mama, if not for you, I won't agree. Nkiru said, It's okay, my daughter. Every good deed has a reward. You know so much about herbs. Go find a cure. Nkiru nodded, determined to help. Shike helped her, and they both worked hard, searching the forest for the best herbs and preparing remedies. Nkiru treated the sick, staying by their sides day and night. Slowly, the villagers began to recover. The king too regained his strength, thanks to Nkiru herbal medicine. In no time, everything was back to normal in the village. One hot afternoon, Nkiru was sleeping in her room when her mother suddenly rushed in to wake her up. Nkiru, Nkiru, she tapped in excitement. Wake up, someone is here to see you, her mother said. Who? Nkiru asked, still sleeping. Come and see, her mother said, and ran out in joy. Nkiru was still sleepy, but she was curious about what could make her mother this excited. Slowly, she walked out of the hut and was surprised to see many villagers gathered around the hut, including Shike. All of them were looking surprised with anticipation. Prince Ebuka was there too. By the corner of her hut, there were gifts of foodstuff, beautiful attires, jewelries, and drinks. As Nkiru stepped out of her hut, still confused about what was going on, Prince Ebuka walked up to her. Slowly, he knelt down on one knee, presenting her with a ring, and said, "Marry me." Everyone was shocked. Nkiru stood there with an indifferent expression, looking at Prince Ebuka, who was still kneeling on one knee, with the ring in his hand. The clouds were all ears, waiting for her response. Without saying a word, Nkiru slowly turned away from the prince and walked towards Shike, who was standing among the cloud. Shike has been watching everything with a sad face, feeling his heart sink. Prince Ebuka remained on one knee, shocked and embarrassed by Nkiru's silence and rejection. Now standing face to face with Shike, Nkiru looked into his eyes and asked calmly, "When are you going to tell me how you feel about me? Or will you keep hiding it?" Shike's eyes widened in shock. "So, you knew how I feel about you? I feared you would reject me because I have nothing to offer, especially with this hideous scar on my face," Shike said, his voice shaking. Nkiru smiled softly. "You should have voiced your intention first instead of assuming. You are not the only one with scars, you know," she said. Without wasting any minutes, Shike kneeled down on one knee and took Nkiru's hand. "Nkiru, you are the most incredible person I have ever known. Your kindness, strength, brain, and beauty are unmatched. I have loved you from the moment you helped me in the forest. Will you be with me? Not just as a friend, but as a partner for life?" Nkiru's eyes widened with tears. "Yes, Shike, I will," she said without hesitation. With joy, Shike stood up and kissed her, sealing their love. The villagers gasped in shock, but Shike and Nkiru ignored them. Hand in hand, they walked away from the venue, leaving the crowd behind. Prince Ebuka, still kneeling on one knee, was filled with anger and embarrassment. No one had ever rejected him so publicly before. He stood up, fuming, unable to believe what just happened. As Nkiru and Shike walked away, the villagers began to murmur among themselves. Some questioned what gave Nkiru the boldness to reject a whole prince. Ebuka, the man who every woman wants, for a poor man like Shike who feeds pigs and has a hideous scar on his face. The news of the incident spread around the village. Everyone has something to say. When Nkiru's father heard about how Nkiru rejected the prince's proposal, he was furious. "It has occurred to me that you never wanted any good things for yourself," her father said to her the instant she came back home that evening. "So, You rejected the whole prince of this village for that pig man who has nothing to offer you? With that calabash head of yours, shouldn't you be